about this summer. I've been thinking about the question of regard for the other, especially those who we might not be inclined to like, or someone in another group, another tribe of ours, and how Zen practice might help us address it. And I think it does. I think we have something to offer in this department. So a guy walks into a doctor and he says, Doc, I don't know what's the matter with me. I touched myself here, I hurt. I touched myself here, I hurt. I touched myself here, I hurt. And the doctor says, sir, I think you have a broken finger. I heard that joke when I was training at Mount Baldy Zen Center. My mother would send me a cassette tape of the Prairie Home Companion joke show. And when I heard that joke, I thought, now there's a Buddhist joke. I think we all have a tendency to think that that's the problem, and that's the problem, and that's the problem over there. Our problem is our parents, or our, misbehaving kid, or that boss, or that one annoying person. And I think these are real problems, to be sure. But there's also a real problem that we have with our perceiving finger. And I think Buddhism and the Zen school say that the way we perceive things actually is our most fundamental problem. So I think this practice gives us the chance to heal that finger, and it makes us better over time at perceiving things more clearly and more correctly, to see people and situations better, and from different angles, not just one angle, and to be less knee-jerk, to be able to see people with less knee-jerk bias. Or discrimination. And that, I think, affects the way we treat others, the way we approach others, the way we work with situations, which I think helps everyone in some way. I think in Zen, we start with ourselves rather than others. There's a Zen phrase that Rinzai, as well as I think others, used, that stuck with me during my practice. Turn your light around and shine it on yourself. In Zen, we start that process, I think, with Zazen. That's our primary tool for investigating ourselves and investigating our perception. So when we do Zazen, as we just did, we find calm. We breathe in and out from our belly calmly. And I think, now we know that activates our parasympathetic nervous system and tells us that we're okay. That we might imagine danger lurking in our future, but that if we don't make the right move, that something will get us, or we'll fall into some horrible state. But we can learn through Zazen that there is no danger lurking right now at this moment. And then below that calm, when we're really calm, I think we can find a place of no thinking. or at least a lot less thinking. And when we get quiet enough, when we get desireless enough, then that place of no thinking appears, or a lot less thinking. And that, I think of that as a further step below calm. And it's not every meditative tradition that stresses that, but our school does, I think. So we say it's possible to drop the need to worry or plan, to drop the need to want anything at all. We can lose our need to compulsively think or judge anything. We can get so calm that we don't prefer any one thing to another thing. Don't prefer any sound or sight or feeling or any outcome. You know, say, and in that place, we don't have to judge anything. Just allow it to be as it is. So I think it's possible, of course, and you, I'm sure, know this too, to be able to sense things without any thought, without any judgment, to perceive them without those things. And our tradition calls that a place of non-discrimination. One of the most, many of you would know this poem, the Zen poem, Song of Faith Mind. It goes by different titles, confusingly, by the third ancestor. Maybe some people chant it. Do you all chant it, Mushin?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, it's great. And so you'll recognize, here's one translation. The great way is only difficult for those who pick and choose. Do not like, do not dislike, and all will be clear. Even slightest distinctions made set earth and heaven far apart. If you would clearly see the truth, be neither for nor against. The battle between for and against is the mind's worst disease. So in that place of deep calm, we don't need to be for or against anything. For or against the itch that might come up, or the hum of the computer, or the way you acted yesterday. You don't have to be for or against that difficult relationship you're in, or the plan that you're working on later, tomorrow. You can just let all that fall away, and we're left with this moment without any positive or negative charge. And that's a non-discriminating mind. That's the way I see it. Not being for or against things, just letting them be as they are without any positive or negative. There's a book I liked when I read it some years ago by the evolutionary psychologist Jonathan Haidt, called The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And one of the hooks for me was right at the end of the introduction. He uses exactly that quote from Song of Faith Mind. He's not a Buddhist, but he says, if we want to loosen the roots of our self-righteousness, the fixed, hardened view that we know what's right and wrong with a situation or with another person, and we know it quickly, then we should learn how to go to this place of neither for nor against. And if we want to loosen the reflexive tendency we have to see a person in an out group as bad, or someone I have very little in common with, we should get to know that place of neither for nor against, and let it affect us. And I agree. I think that not being for or against allows us to relax, loosen our for or against reflexive tendency that I have anyway. Our instant categorization of things we like and things we don't like, even unconscious. So the state of non-discrimination, I think, helps us loosen the way we categorize people, the way we discriminate against them, often because of just one characteristic they have, especially if that characteristic is one that we dislike or we've been taught to dislike, especially if we strongly dislike it. Then that becomes all we see of the person. That person narrows to simply that characteristic very quickly, and I think can become kind of a cartoon version of a person, not the complex, multifaceted person they are. And that might be because of the way they dress, or because they're Republican, or because of the color of their skin, or because we find out they're a Mormon. Or it might be because that person, I know that person, and that person was unkind to me or wrong to me, and I've decided that's a bad person. And you know, if I see them in the store, I live on an island, basically a small town. I see everybody in the store, and you know, it's hard. That person narrows to the person who's wronged me. That's what I see, and I have a hard time seeing the other side of that person without trying. Sometimes. So being neither for or against means temporarily I'm not for or against anybody or anything. And getting to know that place, I think, helps with this knee-jerk reaction that we tend to have, the kind of quick categorization of everything. And Haidt says we wouldn't want to live in that state all the time. And I think that's true. Zen practice, the state of being for nor against is just temporary. It should be only temporary. I was taught you cannot stay in heaven because there are no restaurants or bathrooms there. So we become quiet, we become calm in our practice. We see if we can find that place of no self, no distinction, no discrimination, and then inevitably we come back to ourselves, and it's time to go out to eat and choose where to go. But I think we're different having been there, and we're different the more we get to know that place. And I think when in the context of community in particular and teaching, you all are the Sangha Jewel Zen Center. I really do like that name. I think this practice can lead to an attitude of that less rigidly categorizes everything, and that doesn't rush to judgment, and that moves us away from self-righteousness. So getting to know our non-discriminating side, when we can feel it, I think helps us work with others, and including others that we might not be inclined to like. And when we do see somebody we don't like, as I said, from a group we don't understand, we have this tendency to categorize them, and that tendency that tends to blind us to other aspects of that person or of that group. So Robert Wright, a journalist who has written a few books on evolutionary psychology mostly, he came to give a talk at our place a couple of years ago after he came up with his book, Why Buddhism is True. Maybe some of you have read that book. I don't know. And he describes in that book a moment at the end of a meditation retreat where he sees a plantain weed. Now, the plantain weed is an old enemy of his. He spent hours battling it in his yard with tools and spades and weed killer, and now at the end of this retreat he sees a field of plantain, and it's gorgeous. He sees it completely differently. It's beautiful, in fact. It's no longer a weed, he says. It no longer has simply that category. I think we would say it's both a weed and not a weed. And everything is that. I think when we have a fixed category for a weed, it's difficult to see other aspects of the weed. And when we have fixed categories of people, we tend not to see the whole person. We studied the Heart Sutra during our little mini Ango period a few months ago, and uses our text, the Thich Nhat Hanh's commentary on it. And he's got a story in there about the Buddha and Mara. Maybe some of you have heard this story. I think it's completely made up. Well, I mean, a lot of Buddha stories are completely made up, but I think this one might be just made up by Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't know. I couldn't find it anywhere else. But he's heard lots of stories over the course of his life. So this may have filtered through from the tradition. Anyhow, it's a great story. So Mara, Buddha and Ananda are staying in a hut, and Mara comes by, and Ananda looks out the window and sees him there and freaks out. And he opens the door and says, no, Mara, don't come by here. Mara is in a pretty fixed category in the Buddhist tradition of bad, evil. So Ananda says, shoo, go away. We don't want to see you. Get lost. And the Buddha overhears this from an inner room, and being the Buddha, he's not flustered at all. He says, oh, is it Mara? Come on in. So Ananda lets him in, though he's worried and annoyed. And Buddha says, let's have tea. So Ananda fixes them tea. And at tea, Mara starts complaining. He says, it's hard to be Mara. I got to talk in riddles all day. There's a lot of pressure, looking evil all the time. My disciples, they're getting in all kinds of trouble. They're interested in nonviolence and many other things they shouldn't be interested in. Maybe you should have them. Maybe you should take them all, Buddha. And Nanda's just shivering. Well, Buddha says, it's no great picnic for me either. My disciples, they're quarreling all the time, building these great big stupas that I don't want. They don't really listen to me. So it turns out that Buddha and Mara have something in common. And after that very pleasant conversation, Mara gets up and leaves peacefully. And Thich Nhat Hanh just leaves it at that. I think we all have an Ananda in us, and we all have a Buddha. And I've wondered, what is it that gives the Buddha the guts to let Mara in for tea? I guess his sitting practice helps, no doubt. He knows that non-discriminating part of himself and lets it have space in his conscious mind. and his intuition. I would guess, after lots of sitting practice, is that humans are not cartoons, that they are complex. I imagine that he sees many sides of people when he sees them, even Mara. And I wonder whether he also saw it as a kind of duty as well, to meet Mara, to have him in when he happened to come by. I feel a kind of duty as a Buddhist to do that when I can. I can't always, and that's okay too. But I feel a kind of responsibility to try. We, of course, have to do this practice, not just on the cushion, but out in life too, and to notice our prejudices and how quickly they come up, and is a part of practice, and to question them. It's part of my practice. And I think we have to practice meeting others that we may be skeptical of, or maybe from a tribe that we don't like, and to do that actively, even though that may not always be easy. My wife and I have a meditation supply business. I am right now in the shop of that meditation supply business. It looks very nice here, I guess, but really, see, that's what kind of illusion I have built. We didn't know what we were going to do when we came from Mount Baldy, and somebody was giving away their meditation supply business. Maybe you know that person, Mushin. Sort of rings a bell. Right, you do. And so anyway, so that's how we decided to make our living. And we finally got large enough to hire an employee, and we chose among 4 or 5 people, Mary. That's not a real name, but it was easy. She was so interested and in the work and careful. It was obvious. And she had a good resume. And I told her the first day, you're welcome to meditate with us, because we do that every day on the clock. And she said, oh, no, thank you. I won't be doing that. I'm a member of the church next door. Well, the church next door is the most fundamentalist evangelical church on the island. And so alarm bells went off in my head. And I told my wife, Lidun, who is Norwegian, born in Norway and bred. I told her, oh boy, I said, I don't think this is going to work out. Going to have to handle all these Buddha statues, answer the phone, memorize all this Japanese incense names. And I told her, I know, I grew up with these folks in the South, and I know them. Lidun, I don't think it's going to work out. And Lidun told me, she said, I don't see it that way at all. She chose this job. I think she might do fine. And all of a sudden, I had to admit, I'm the bigot here. I thought those guys were the bigots. So my label for Mary totally narrowed my view of her. And that was a humbling moment for me. One of many that taught me to respect the kind of strength and quickness, alacrity of my discriminating mind. Of course, she turned out to be a fantastic coworker, and I'm still friends with her, Facebook friends with her. And since then, I reached out to the minister of the church next door, and believe it or not, this is true, we read that book together, The Righteous Mind, and discussed it. So that was that has been an important relationship to me. I think our Buddhist practice can help us combat narrow, fixed views of people, and I think it can help us combat uh, sexism and racism and ableism. And I think it also should teach us that quickly categorizing people is very easy to do. That it takes work to overcome it, and that meditation is part of that work, but it's also not enough. I think someone can do deep meditation for a long, long time, and in some areas still be judgmental and biased and stuck. So I think our work is also to actively examine ourselves and our actions, to think as well as not think, uh, and uh, and be helped by our Buddhist context, teachers and Dharma and Sangha. I feel that in general, the way that Zen most helps is in the interplay between thinking and not thinking. That's what allows our character to develop, and it allows us to see and clear and think more clearly and helpfully and wisely. And so in Buddhism, I think in order to help ourselves um, through life and to help others in our life, we first turn our light inward, and we work on fixing our perception by dropping our thinking self, and by finding a place without that's neither for nor against. And then I think we can regard others in a more accurate and a more broad-hearted way. That's my hope. And I think if we can do a good job with that, then we can really offer something to other people.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you. Would